Have you ever caught yourself mid-sentence, carefully choosing words not because they reflect your truth, calculating their impact on your audience? Second, where your authentic response dies in your throat, replaced by something safer, something more palatable. You're not alone in this invisible struggle. Right now, as you listen to these words, millions of people are diluting their essence, trading pieces of their fleeting comfort of acceptance. But what if I told you that this very mechanism, this desperate hunger for approval, is the silent architect of happiness? What if the thing you believe protects you is actually the prison that contains you? Carl Jung, one of the most penetrating minds in human psychology, spent his life unraveling this paradox. He understood that beneath our sophisticated facades, we're all running the same program, desperately seeking validation while simultaneously suffocating our authentic. The tragic irony, the more we chase it, the further we drift from the very person we're approving of. Consider this moment in your life with brutal honesty. How many of your recent decisions were truly yours? How many relationships do you maintain not out of genuine connection, but out of fear of disappointment? Often do you bite your tongue, suppress your opinions, or shape-shift your personality to fit the expectations of invisible judges? If you're honest, and I mean devastatingly honest, you'll realize that approval-seeking isn't just something you do occasionally. It's the background radiation of your existence, the quiet hum that influences every choice, every word, every breath. Society didn't accidentally create this dynamic. It was designed this way. From your first breath, you were taught that love is conditional, that acceptance must be earned, that your worth is determined by external validation. Your parents, teachers, peers, they all participated in this conditioning, usually with the best intentions. They taught you that good behavior brings rewards, that conformity ensures belonging, that rocking the boat leads to isolation. But here's what they didn't tell you. Every time you chose acceptance over authenticity, you committed a small act of self-betrayal. Every suppressed opinion, every swallowed truth, every moment you smiled when you wanted to scream, each was a tiny murder of your genuine self. And the accumulated weight of these betrayals has shaped the person you've become. Someone who knows what they want but can't seem to choose it. Someone who understands their truth but fears to speak it. Jung recognized this pattern because he lived it himself. He understood that we create what he called a persona, a social mask designed to navigate the world's expectations. This persona isn't inherently evil. It's necessary for functioning in society. We need professional roles, social behaviors, cultural adaptations to survive. The problem arises when we forget that the mask is just a mask. When we identify so completely with our persona that we lose touch with the person underneath. Think about your own life through this lens. Who are you at work versus who you are alone? Who are you with your family versus who you are with strangers? Who are you on social media versus who you are in your most private moments? The variations aren't just different facets of a complete person, they're often completely different people, each crafted to meet specific expectations. This fragmentation creates an exhausting existence. You're constantly monitoring, adjusting, performing. Your energy is divided among multiple characters, leaving little left for your authentic self. Worse, you begin to lose track of which version is real. The mask becomes so familiar that you forget what lies beneath it. Jung's psychological typology reveals why some people are more susceptible to this trap than others. Those with extroverted feeling functions, for instance, naturally orient themselves towards social harmony. Their internal compass points not toward their own values but toward what's acceptable to others. They evaluate their worth based on external feedback, making them particularly vulnerable to approval addiction. But don't assume this affects only certain personality types. Jung discovered that approval-seeking can infiltrate any psychological configuration. An introverted thinker might not seek to please socially, but they might suppress their ideas out of fear that their thoughts will be rejected or ridiculed. The mechanism is the same, self-censorship to avoid disapproval. but the expression differs. The real tragedy is how this pattern calcifies over time. Each time you choose acceptance over authenticity, you strengthen the neural pathways that prioritize external validation. Your brain literally rewires itself to depend on others' approval for basic functioning. You become addicted to a drug that others control, at the mercy of opinions that shift like sand. But here's where it gets even more insidious. The aspects of yourself that you suppress, your anger, your desires, your unconventional thoughts, your raw emotions, don't simply disappear. They get pushed into what Jung called the shadow, the unconscious reservoir of everything you've deemed unacceptable about yourself. And the shadow has a funny way of growing stronger the more you ignore it. Every time you smile when you're angry, every time you agree when you disagree, every time you minimize yourself to make others comfortable, you're feeding the shadow. These rejected parts of yourself don't vanish, they accumulate power in the darkness. And the larger your shadow grows, the more energy you must expend keeping it hidden. The more you must perform, control, and manage your image to prevent your unacceptable self from being discovered. This creates a vicious cycle. The fear of your shadow being exposed drives you to seek even more approval, to perfect your persona even further. But the more you perfect your mask, the more estranged you become from your authentic self. You end up living as a character in your own life story, watching yourself perform but never quite feeling real. The most heartbreaking part? You begin to mistake this performance for living. You convince yourself that this careful, controlled, approval-seeking version of yourself is who you really are. You forget that authenticity is even an option. You settle for the crumbs of acceptance while starving your soul of genuine expression. Jung saw this dynamic clearly because he experienced it firsthand. For years, he was the golden boy of psychoanalysis, Freud's chosen successor, positioned at the center of a revolutionary movement. He had everything that should have brought satisfaction: recognition, prestige, belonging to an exclusive intellectual circle, but something was stirring in his depths, ideas and insights that couldn't be contained within Freudian orthodoxy. He faced a choice that we all eventually face: maintain the approval of his professional family or follow his authentic vision. Stay safe within established boundaries or risk everything for truth. The easy path was clear. Continue being what others expected, maintain his position, keep the peace. But Jung recognized that this path led to spiritual death. The decision to break with Freud wasn't just professional, it was existential. It meant abandoning the approval of his mentor and peers, facing criticism and isolation, standing alone with his vision. It meant confronting his own shadow, his pride, his fear of rejection, his need for validation. But it also meant the possibility of becoming who he truly was rather than who others needed him to be. This is the choice that awaits every person who begins to see through the approval trap. At some point, if you're serious about living authentically, you'll face your own break with Freud moment. It might be leaving a career that brings status but kills your spirit. It might be ending relationships that provide comfort but require you to diminish yourself. It might be expressing opinions that invite criticism but reflect your truth. The question isn't whether this moment will come, it's whether you'll have the courage to choose authenticity when it does. Because here's what Jung discovered: the fear of disapproval is nothing compared to the regret of never having lived as yourself. The criticism of others stings for a moment, but the betrayal of your own soul echoes for a lifetime. But understanding the problem is only the beginning. Recognizing that you've been trapped in an approval-seeking pattern doesn't automatically free you from it. The conditioning runs deep, the habits are entrenched, and the fear is real. Breaking free requires more than intellectual understanding. It demands a fundamental reorganization of how you relate to yourself and the world. This is where Jung's concept of individuation becomes crucial. Individuation isn't a destination you reach. It's a lifelong process of becoming who you truly are. It's the gradual dismantling of false selves and the patient reconstruction of authentic being. It's learning to distinguish between the voice of your conditioning and the voice of your soul. The path forward requires courage, the courage to disappoint, to stand alone, to face the criticism that comes with authenticity. But it also offers something that no amount of approval can provide: the profound peace that comes from living in alignment with your deepest truth. When you stop needing others to validate your worth, you discover a source of strength that no one can take away. The moment you decide to stop seeking approval, you enter dangerous territory. Not because authenticity is inherently dangerous, but because the world around you has a vested interest in keeping you tame, predictable, and manageable. Your sudden refusal to play by the unspoken rules of social compliance creates ripples that others feel as threats to their own carefully constructed reality. But here's what happens when you cross that threshold. You discover that the person you've been hiding is far more powerful than the person you've been showing. The energy you've been pouring into performance, image management, and people-pleasing gets redirected toward creation, growth, and genuine expression. For the first time in perhaps years, you begin to feel truly alive. Jung understood that this transformation isn't a comfortable process. In fact, he warned that individuation, the journey toward authentic selfhood, is one of the most challenging undertakings a human being can attempt. It requires you to consciously and deliberately break with your false self, the carefully constructed identity that has carried you through life up to this point. This false self isn't your enemy. It was your survival mechanism. It protected you when you were vulnerable, helped you navigate complex social situations, and earned you the acceptance you needed to function. But what serves you in childhood often imprisons you in adulthood. The same strategies that once kept you safe now keep you small. Think about the messages that shaped your false self. Perhaps you learned that boys don't cry, so you buried your emotional sensitivity. Maybe you discovered that girls should be agreeable, so you silenced your fierce opinions. You might have internalized that success means status, failure equals shame, or that love is only given to those who are perfect. Each of these beliefs became a rule in the operating system of your false self. The dismantling process begins when you start questioning these inherited rules. When you ask, "Says who?" When you realize that the voice telling you to be careful, to not rock the boat, to keep everyone happy isn't your voice at all. It's the voice of your conditioning. This realization can be earth-shattering because it means acknowledging that much of what you've considered your personality is actually a collection of adaptations designed to win approval. But here's where the real work begins: integrating your shadow. Remember, the shadow contains everything you've rejected about yourself to maintain your acceptable persona. It holds your anger, your selfishness, your sexual desires, your aggressive impulses, your vulnerability, your power, all the aspects of human nature that you've deemed too dangerous, too messy, or too inappropriate to express. The integration process isn't about acting on every shadow impulse. That would be chaos. It's about acknowledging these aspects of yourself, understanding their origins, and finding healthy ways to express their energy. When you can say, "Yes, I am capable of anger, and that's human," you no longer need to fear others discovering your anger. When you can admit, "Yes, I have selfish desires, and that's natural," you stop needing to prove your altruism to everyone. This integration dissolves the fundamental fear that drives approval seeking, the terror that others will see who you really are. When you've fully accepted yourself, shadows and all, there's nothing left to hide. Others' opinions lose their power over you because you're no longer keeping secrets from yourself. Consider how this plays out in daily life. Imagine walking into a room without scanning for approval cues. Picture expressing your honest opinion without calculating its social cost. Envision making decisions based on your authentic desires rather than others' expectations. This isn't about becoming selfish or inconsiderate. It's about operating from a place of genuine choice rather than unconscious reactivity. Jung's own journey illustrates this transformation powerfully. His break with Freud launched him into what he called his confrontation with the unconscious, a period of intense psychological upheaval where he had to face his own shadow material. He experienced visions, engaged with archetypal figures, and dove deep into the symbolic realm of the psyche. This wasn't an academic exercise. It was a lived experience of psychological death and rebirth. During this period, Jung was isolated from the psychoanalytic community, criticized by former colleagues and forced to question everything he thought he knew about himself and his work. But this confrontation with his shadow led to the development of analytical psychology, his most authentic contribution to human understanding. He emerged from this dark night of the soul as a truly individuated person, someone who no longer needed external validation to confirm his worth. The practical implications of this transformation are profound. When you stop seeking approval, you naturally begin to attract different kinds of relationships. People who are drawn to your people-pleasing persona may drift away, but those who appreciate authenticity will be drawn closer. You'll find yourself surrounded by individuals who want to know the real you, not the performance you've been giving. Your decision-making process transforms as well. Instead of asking, "What will people think?" you begin asking, "What do I truly want?" This shift in internal dialogue changes everything. Career choices align with your actual interests rather than status considerations. Relationships deepen because you're showing up as yourself rather than as a character. Even seemingly small decisions, what to wear, what to say, where to go, become expressions of your authentic self rather than calculations for approval. But let's be honest about the challenges. The people in your life who benefited from your people-pleasing behavior won't celebrate your newfound authenticity. They may feel threatened, confused, or even betrayed. Some relationships will end, and this can be painful. You might face criticism, rejection, or isolation as you learn to stand in your truth. This is where you'll need to cultivate what Jung called the courage to be. It's the willingness to face disapproval without crumbling, to stand alone when necessary, to trust your inner compass even when others question your direction. This courage isn't something you either have or don't have. It's something you develop through practice, like a muscle that grows stronger with use. The reward for this courage is immense. The discovery of your authentic power. When you're no longer spending energy maintaining a false persona, when you're no longer fragmenting your attention across multiple characters, when you're no longer second-guessing every word and action, that liberated energy becomes available for creation, growth, and genuine contribution. You begin to understand what Jung meant when he said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." This isn't about perfection or having it all figured out. It's about the ongoing process of aligning your outer life with your inner truth. It's about making choices from authenticity rather than fear. It's about contributing your unique gifts to the world rather than hiding them to avoid criticism. The journey toward authenticity is ultimately a return to the person you were before the world taught you to be someone else. But it's not a regression, it's an integration. You're not abandoning everything you've learned or throwing away all social grace. You're distinguishing between what serves your authentic self and what serves only the approval-seeking persona. This process requires ongoing vigilance because the old patterns have deep roots. The impulse to seek approval doesn't disappear overnight. Even years into your authenticity journey, you'll catch yourself falling back into people-pleasing behaviors. The difference is that now you notice it happening. You can course-correct. You can choose differently. The ultimate goal isn't to become immune to others' opinions. That would be another form of reaction. The goal is to become sovereign over your own self-worth, to know your value independently of external validation, to be able to receive feedback without being destroyed by criticism or inflated by praise, to live from a place of centered authenticity, where your actions spring from choice rather than compulsion. When you reach this place, and it is a practice, not a destination, you discover something remarkable. The very thing you feared losing by being authentic, love, connection, belonging, becomes more available to you than ever before. People are drawn to authenticity like flowers to sunlight. They want to be around someone who has the courage to be real because it gives them permission to be real too. Your journey toward authenticity isn't just personal, it's a gift to the world. Every person who chooses truth over approval, who integrates their shadow instead of projecting it, who lives from their center rather than their periphery, creates more space for others to do the same. You become a permission slip for authenticity in a world starving for realness. So the question remains, are you ready to disappoint the people who need you to be small so they can feel comfortable? Are you willing to let go of the approval that has kept you safe but trapped? Can you trust that the person you truly are is worth the risk of rejection? The choice, as always, is yours. But remember, the pain of discipline weighs ounces, while the pain of regret weighs tons. You can continue seeking approval and remain forever at the mercy of others' opinions. Or you can begin the challenging but liberating journey toward authentic selfhood. The world doesn't need another people pleaser. It needs you, the real you, with all your complexities, shadows, and unique gifts. It needs your authentic voice, your genuine perspective, your unrepeatable contribution. But you'll never know what you have to offer until you stop trying to be what others want and start discovering who you actually are. The journey begins with a single step. The next time you feel the urge to seek approval, pause and ask yourself what you would choose if no one was watching. Then have the courage to choose that. Your authentic self is waiting,